Near mint condition, the home of collected editions. Oh my gosh, look at that panel of Batman. You have the absolute, you have the deluxe. DC Comics firing on all cylinders.
Alright everybody, welcome back to Near Mint Condition. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Superman family, the Giant Turtle Man trade paperback. Let's go ahead and do it. What's up everybody, I am Dom of X, Near Mint Condition Manager, comicsrelease.com, assistant editor. Today again we're going to be taking a look at this pretty hefty trade paperback, if I do say so myself. One of the largest that we've had in the DC Finest line so far. Here is a look at the front. This is the infamous cover to issue number 53 of Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, of course that being the main ticket of attendance for this book. But if I may, the front cover credits, which you see here on a binder, Jerry Siegel and Jim Mooney, are very similar to the Supergirl Girl of Steel DC Finest trade paperback. Here you can see that the letters are a little bit more spaced out. They're less kerned than the ones you see here. I was actually surprised that they didn't add 2 creator credits on the front of the DC Finest trade paperback for Superman family, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Just wanted to note that out, that they probably use the same design material when you consider the both of these, when you look at the gradients for Supergirl and how that blue shade is very, very similar to the shade in Superman family. They very much look alike, and I don't think that's by mistake. I think that these books, specifically in the line of Superman, they want to keep that same blue hue consistent with every single one of these books. But again, just wanted to point that out for clarification for those who might be like, wait, maybe those creator credits aren't right. So they definitely overhauled some of the previous Superman DC Finest on from the previous books to the next one. One thing I also just wanted to point out, even if for a tiny bit, is that these two books do overlap in terms of the year. As you can see here on the right hand side, this is a look at the spine, very much the same. Here we see Superman, Lois Lane, Streaky, and Krypto the Super-Dog presenting DC Finest stories. This is of course a look at the back, very much the same as all of the previous editions. Superman, Super Friends get their chance to shine. Yes, this is very much less Superman heavy and more so centric on all of his supporting characters, which we'll dive into right now. Let's go ahead, get into the 1960s and 1961 era of DC Comics right here in this DC Finest. Let's go ahead and dive into Superman family, the Giant Turtle Man. Here is the cover insert, which is, of course, illustrated by none other than Curt Swan and Stan K on the inks. This is the cover to issue number 54, the crazy issue where Jimmy Olsen is suddenly now the king of the giant ants. That is going to be a very much a recurring theme in the issues of this specific DC Finest title. On the left-hand side, you do have the publication editorial information, including the original editorial teams along with the collected edition editorial teams. Have done a fantastic job, in my opinion, of recording all of these and restoring these in this book. Here, this is the table of contents. You have all of these covers, which are illustrated by penciler Curt Swan and inker Stan K, unless they are otherwise noted. You also have at the end of the table of contents, just like all of the material published before 1986, a note of there is no censorship in these specific titles. But you also do have here, again, that same warning notice, again, like you do for all of these older DC titles. In this, we do have a 664-page book, which makes this one of the larger DC Finest publicated titles up to date. Unlike the Batgirl Nobody Dies Tonight trade paperback edition, this is one of the larger DC Finest books that we do have up to date, which is a very, very nice thing to have, obviously, when you are talking about this era of DC Comics. Collected in this is Action Comics issues 266 and 277 to 278. 278 was previously uncollected, or not uncollected, but it wasn't part of the original listing on Edelweiss or Penguin Random House. Adventure Comics 287 is also in this specific DC Finest title, but that was also not part of the original solicitation. So very nice to have those two issues collected in here. Superman 142 to 143 and 147 is also in here. 147 was also, to my knowledge, I believe it was part of the original publication in terms of, hey, we're going to be putting this out. So it was part of the original pushed up to solicitation. Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, issues 19 through 28, and Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, 47 through 56. Now, has this been collected before? Surprisingly, yes. Yes, it definitely has. You can actually see that we have some titles that are sporadically collected in certain issues. Like, for example, one of the Action Comics issues is collected in a trade called Tales of the Super Pets as part of the Super Pets movie that was made by Warner Brothers. They wanted to put out a collection of those as per the movie synergy, and some of those issues were collected in there. You also have Supergirl Archives. You have the Supergirl Silver Age Omnibus and Silver Age, as, believe it or not, this actually does double dip with the Supergirl DC Finest trade paperback edition. So chances are, if you have read that Supergirl DC Finest, you have also read some of those stories that are also collected in here, and I'm specifically talking about the Action Comics issues 266 that are collected in both, because Streaky is a part of it, and Streaky very much is a part of the Superman family, not part of, well, Superman, obviously. You also have the Showcase Presents Superman Family volumes, which I think that they're going to be taking a lot from in terms of the mapping. You can see that, at least from the table of contents, that there is going to be a lot of back and forth in terms of the titles that you will be going between Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane and Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Very much a back and forth between those listed by publication date. Now, in this title, you will also find the works of the men that you see on the front, which are, of course, Jerry Siegel, Otto Binder, and Jim Mooney. Is it Otto Binder or Binder? I have heard both. I like saying Binder, but Curtis has told me Binder, so I don't know. Y'all help me out in the comment section, guys. I want to improve on my enunciation. But heavily featured and not on the front cover, and honestly, to my opinion, they should have been, because they did kern these names in a lot more than the Supergirl one. Kurt Swan is the heavy-duty man in terms of the art that is in this book. A lot of the Jimmy Olsen issues here are drawn by the fantabulous Kurt Swan. So not only is the remarkable artist there, also Kurt Schaffenberger takes a lot of the art in this book. And also along with him are Al Plastino, who is on a couple of issues, John Forte, and George Papp. So there are some quips and bits that I do want to just point out there, but again, that's just me nitpicking in an otherwise volume that I did not expect to enjoy as much. I found out from a couple of documentaries that I was watching while on the train to classes that there was a Kevin Burns documentary back that came out in 2006 or 2007. It's on YouTube. It's called Look Up in the Sky, The Amazing Story of Superman. In that documentary, it was actually revealed that the 1952 television series, The Adventures of Superman, actually led to national publications to print a Jimmy Olsen title that would feature him. So you had this Jimmy Olsen title running from 1954 onwards that would be able to say, hey, we have a really, really popular character that always gets into the biggest knick-knack situations that you can think of, and Jimmy just happens to star in it. And the same goes for Lois, although Lois was a lot more different in that Showcase issue number 9 actually featured a story by her, and DC said, can we let her, because of, again, her popularity and just how long she has been part of Superman's immediate world, give her a title. So Superman eventually, and Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane eventually ended up being the forefront star of this book. Now, My experience with some of these titles is twofold. The first of which is that I actually found out that these two titles existed in 2019 when I just started exploring more of the, I guess you want to call it, the outside of the Batman, because I was a Batman kid growing up. I was a Justice kid growing up, but I never was a big Superman fan as a kid, but I definitely am now. So I was reading through Greg Rucka's Lois Lane and Matt Fraction's Jimmy Olsen, which was definitely harkening back to sort of the Silver Age. If you have Brian Michael Bendis on both Superman and Action and pioneering those two titles, he brought in two of his closest friends to do a Lois Lane. You got Lois Lane Undercover Story, of course, by Greg Rucka, and then Jimmy Olsen by Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber, as to say, we are going to make this as Silver Agey as possible. And that actually made me realize this was not a brand new thing. This was a thing that they were doing in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So for the entirety, essentially, of the Silver Age, you had these two titles that featured Lois and Jimmy and chronicling one-shot anthological adventures that would, again, have them end up in the weirdest of situations. I think Jimmy Olsen more so because the comedy bits definitely endear him towards more of that type of pulpy story, if you want to call it that. And I cannot believe how much I enjoyed reading some of these issues for the first time, and also wishing that I had gotten to them sooner. Because again, not only are they illustrated beautifully by Kurt Swan, they are also very much the bite-sized 6 to 8 page adventures that I'm looking for when I just want to have some fun time reading these characters and everything that they end up towards. Before I get into a quick overview, I suppose, of all these stories, because if I went one by one talking about the individual stories bit by bit, I would be here, I think, for 6 hours, because these are one-off shot stories. And there you can see this is the image to where they took from Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane on the spine of this book. The cover inserts, I actually will say, are only for issues that don't prominently feature Superman. And Superman, for example, Superman issues 142, 143, and 147 Adventure Comics, they don't have the cover inserts in these stories like you see here for Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane number 23. So if Superman is on the cover, they take it off because, again, it is a family book and not necessarily a Superman book. You have, again, non-focus on Superman. But what are some of the things that I love about this specific era of DC Comics? You have Superman and Jimmy that are always in a conundrum of the will they, won't they with Lois Lane. Sometimes you have stories where you end up in situations where Jimmy Olsen finds out that there's this super small Superman emergency squad of Kandor that helps Jimmy out with his day-to-day duties and his job at the Daily Planet. And then Jimmy sort of tells Perry White, who I will say I was very, very excited to see him in the pages of these, because George Taylor, I don't have any connections to him, but I do have a connection to Perry White because I know who he is, and he's prominently featured in this book. But anyways, Jimmy Olsen tells Perry, hey, there's a lot of these little tiny guys helping me. You got to believe me. Perry goes and sees and doesn't notice the Superman, the little tiny Superman. So he tells Jimmy, like, what are you talking about? You are a crazy person. And Jimmy, again, often ends up in those awkward situations. Now, what were they really after? There's always a hook to some of these stories where you expect, okay, like this ray is going to make this person giant. But there's always an added twist to the contraption that's in these stories. Maybe it's something that happens to a city. Maybe it's something that happens to the person who shoots it. Maybe it's something behind the people who are after something. There is always an added hook onto these stories, and it's your job to figure it out as a reader as to what on earth is going on in these specific books. Supergirl is also very much in a lot of these stories because she has to still continue to protect her identity as Linda Lee and the secrets between her. And this actually made me realize I need to go back and reread some of these Supergirl stories in the first DC Finest, because these, like I said, it intersects often a lot of the time, because you got Streaky here and also the brand new character which was created in 1959. She ends up here in a lot of these stories incidentally. You have her in danger. Sometimes she needs to help, and sometimes she needs to protect herself. You've also got Giant Turtleman Jimmy. I was reading that on the train firsthand. I was coming back home from school, and I cannot believe the twist to why Jimmy became a turtle guy instead of just a regular big guy who is walking around and destroying stuff. So again, like, there's always that hook added on to plenty of these stories. You've also got character rivalries and relationships, like Streaky versus Krypto. Who's faster, who's stronger, who can do more things. So there are little itsy bitsy pieces of figuring out like who is stronger in what category, which is fun. You've got Lois Lane ending up as the bridesmaid of Robin Hood, for example. What happened to Clark? What happened to her sort of love triangle between Superman and Clark Kent? There's also some adage there. You've got this strong friendship, obviously, with Superman and Jimmy Olsen, and this also has a lot of rivalries as well. Not just in terms of the Super-Cat and Super-Dog, but you've also got Lana Lang. Lana Lang shows up in plenty of these stories, as to say that her rivalry between Lois Lane is definitely not dead in these issues. You have to figure out why on earth is Lana involved, and why is she marrying Superman? Why is she in the specific story? So the flame there isn't dead, and Lois gets jealous, or Superman gets jealous, and it's crazy because it's a Silver Age story. Krypto also falls in love for the first time, which is something that I personally didn't know about. Like, Krypto has a love interest. Like, that to me is not something that I expected from some of these stories. Like, usually when I think of Krypto, maybe that's just because of the post 2010s Superman that I've gotten, where it's like all dour and dreary and Krypto's there to comfort him. And Krypto has a lot of character moments in these issues too, where you get to learn about him. One thing that I love about these stories is that there are often thought bubbles where you can see how characters are reacting to their situations in their head. Obviously, they're not saying it out loud, but it's obvious. It's something like, man, I can't believe that Jimmy would do this, or I can't believe that I'm stuck here. And sometimes it's like guys looking at a ship and looking at control, saying like, wait, how do you control this thing? Like, are we sure that we're not going to be led to an uncertain doom? And Krypto gets a lot of that, because you can't have a dog talk. This isn't Goofy, right? This isn't Goofy from Mickey, but you do get to learn more about his character and how he reacts to certain spots. And this is something that I really, really love about the book, is that it fleshes these characters out because of the contraptions that they're in. So you get great character work, at least for Krypto in this case for me. And then you also get some, see, look at that. You get Streaky and Krypto. So there is very, very nice character work, I think, in this book, where you get to learn more about how these characters react and how these characters get to certain spots in their situations. You've also got Leopard Lady. You've got Lois Lane as a criminal for whatever reason, and Lex Luthor is involved. On the contrary, why on earth does Superman, like, I know why, but there are reasons to why Superman is stuck with people who have alliteration in their name. There's some issues in here that I can't wait for you guys to read, where you actually do get to see the writers sort of mock that a bit. Just say like, hey, why does this guy always fall in love or end up in situations where they have to fight a guy or fall in love with a person that has LL in their name? I think it's quite funny. You've also got dinosaurs. You got pterodactyls. There are moments here where I think like I'm playing a Donkey Kong game. I'm playing a Mario game. So there is really something here for everybody throughout. And again, like, these are 6 to 8 page inserts. They're not too overtly terribly long. They do take a little bit long to read, but they are, I think, are perfect for just how much you're getting in these 8 pages. They're not overtly long. They don't make you go, man, when is this issue going to stop? This I found to be really, really enthusiastically written and built in terms of robust, succinct storytelling. You've got Jimmy Olsen ending up as Elastic Lad. There were moments where I thought, like, man, is that Elongated Man? He looks like Elongated Man. And honestly, if somebody there is out there, please let me know if Kurt Swan drew Elongated Man. Elastic Lad as Jimmy Olsen is absolutely spectacular. Sometimes you got Perry White, who you get to know more of in this specific era of Superman, where suddenly he has powers and he needs to figure out what he needs to do, and he has to interact with Superman. So there are a lot of different character interactions here, not just with the situations that they're entombed in, but you get to see Clark and get to see Superman roll in with the craziness of the Daily Planet. Pete Ross is in here. You've got a lot of other different characters, like Superboy is also in this book, as we do have some Superboy issues and stories. You've got a K9 and Steel, Destructo, and Krypto has to fight them. So you don't just have a Superman Rogues Gallery or a weird Superman ending up in a weird spot. You do have Superman ending up in, or Krypto ending up in situations where he has to fight a bad guy. I also was introduced, I suppose, for the first time to Bizarro Superman stories, or stories where Bizarro just happens to end up, and seeing the inspiration for so many different creators later down the line, whether it be a Jeff Johns or a Gene Luen Yang or a Scott Lobdell, to see how they wrote Bizarro in the mid 2000s, and also all of the creators on TV writing Bizarro dialogue, and that makes the book more fun, because this is the era, I think, where these stories have had to have been in to be as great as they are and to be as iconic as they are. For people to go out and want to say, like, I want to read a Jimmy Olsen story, I want to read a Lois Lane story, like, I think the Silver Age of it just makes this book stronger. You've got Krypto battling Titano in this issue that I'm thumbing over, which ended up being one of my favorite issues, because again, you learn more about Krypto and you learn how he gets to problem solve. It's not just he's there, he's strong, like, he has a brain, he knows what to do in certain situations, which just makes me love the dog more. It makes you connected to the character more, and it makes you understand why they react to certain things in certain situations. You've got Aqua Jimmy, you've got Thor and Jimmy Olsen together somehow, like Thor outside of a Marvel comic, which is something that I usually don't expect. Yes, I do know that Thor is in the DC universe, so for those who are wondering, I am completely aware. But it is very nice to see different worlds fleshed out between these and every single instances of these characters. Now, the only thing I want to say that I had a somewhat of a personal problem with is that sometimes Lois Lane does end up in situations where she has to go undercover to go to a certain country, and like I said, the book does have an awareness warning, just in case that you come across that story, it makes you feel weird. It does have an insert there just to let you know that yes, these were printed in a different time, and you will thumb over some of those stories, unfortunately. But other than that, this made me realize how much I was falling in love with the Silver Age. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I remember 3 years ago where I told myself, I never ever want to read Silver Age, only modern comics are great, I just want to read everything past 1980, but it made me realize just how close-minded I was. And a lot of the DC Finest, and maybe this one especially, to realize maybe that's just not the case. Like, you need to, I think, expand your horizons out and be willing to try something that maybe you're just not in love with, or maybe you were on the fence the first time. I do think that this is one of the better volumes to get somebody like myself out of that hole. And this also, again, just made me realize I need to go back and reread that Supergirl DC Finest and give it another better shot so I can understand more of the world at large, and also the craziness of Metropolis and their characters. And that, as I say, is that. Now, if you're looking to buy DC Finest, the Superman family, the giant turtle man, please check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code near mint condition at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
That is going to be it from me. I am Dom of X. Let me know in the comment section down below if you're planning on picking this up or any of the other Superman-related titles out. I hope you have a great one, Minties. Please stay safe and have an awesome one wherever you go.